All right, y'all. We are one step closer to a game being played. The Steelers and the rest of the NFL cutting down their rosters to 53 men today. Welcome into the Black and Gold Breakdown. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please be sure to do that. And yeah, the Steelers cut down to 53 guys today. So, a lot of the guys that we've talked about for the past few months in terms of, different battles and whatnot, saw in the preseason. Some of them are gone now. A few notable ones being quarterback John Rice Plumlee, who was waived, but I would expect him to be brought back in, a practice squad manner just because of the versatility that he showed that he was capable of. Playing kick returner, they had him do some receiver stuff, obviously quarterback as well. So I would expect him to be somebody that's brought back into the fold for a practice squad spot. Kyron Johnson was kind of the biggest surprise to me. He had a good preseason. I think that the reason the Steelers went in a different way, and I saw a few different people say this, is because him and Nick Herbig are similar builds and whatnot. And I somewhat get that, but I think that's kind of a dumb argument. Like, if you have suit up the best players, and DeMarvin Leal is going to be that fourth edge rusher, and he had a great preseason too. So I'm not disappointed in the fact that DeMarvin Leal is going to be that fourth guy because he did really well. And I would expect Kyron Johnson to, if he clears waivers, the Steelers will bring him back in a practice squad role as well. But if that's the reason that they made the move, I feel like that's a little bit silly. Like, who cares if you got two similar players? If he's the best one, then keep him around. I didn't see. Obviously, you can't keep everybody. Kyron Johnson had a good preseason. DeMarvin Leal had a good preseason. They got a little bit more invested in DeMarvin Leal because they took him day 2, either day 2 or beginning of day 3 a couple years ago. So they got a little bit more invested in him, and they really want to try to carve out a bigger role for him in some way, shape, or form. He had a good preseason, definitely earned a roster spot, no doubt about it. But it was just a little bit surprising to not see, Kyron Johnson get one of those spots. Running back wise, they keep 3. Keep Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Cordero Patterson. Not too many surprises there. And then wide receiver wise, they keep 5. Only 5 of these guys got a roster spot. So George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller. Those are your 5 receivers on the roster. No Quez Watkins. Who else did they bring? No Dez Fitzpatrick. I know a lot of people wanted to see Dez Fitzpatrick maybe get a roster spot. He's another guy that I would expect to get a practice squad spot. He had a few games that he appeared in last year on special teams. So I would expect Dez Fitzpatrick to be a guy who lands on the practice squad. Running back wise, also, they did just sign Boston Scott to the practice squad. He spent 6 years in Philadelphia, joined the Rams over the offseason, but got cut in their round of cuts. So now he is going to be on the Steelers practice squad. But yeah, only keeping 5 receivers. And that's something that we had talked about being a possibility because of the amount of tight ends that they would keep. And they kept 4 because they kept Pat Freiermuth, Michael Pruitt, Darnell Washington, and Connor Hayward. All of them got roster spots. So not too surprising, keeping 4 tight ends / fullback, that they only keep 5 receivers. Jack Coletto, I know a lot of people were wanting to see if Jack Coletto would get a roster spot. Never really felt like something that was going to happen with Connor Hayward basically having that role anyway and being a really good special teamer. He might be a practice squad guy or he might get picked up by somebody else. But I mean, with the fullback kind of dying in today's NFL, it's going to be hard for him to crack a spot just as a fullback alone. And then offensive line-wise, the names that they keep, and they put these in alphabetical order, so bear with me here. Spencer Anderson, James Daniels, Troy Fatanu, Zach Frazier, Broderick Jones, Ryan McCollum, Mason McCormick, Dan Moore, Isaac Samalo. The names that they keep for the offensive line. again, there wasn't too many shocks for the Steelers roster. I think if there was a surprise, it might have been at nickel corner, where they didn't keep Thomas Graham, and it looks very evident that Beanie Bishop is going to be the Week 1 starter. I remember after the draft, we talked about that at length. Like, hey, he's very good, consensus All-American. He could end up being the Week 1 starter, and lo and behold, he did. So congratulations to Beanie Bishop, who, for all intents and purposes, looks like he's going to be the starter in the slot Week 1. So all the defensive backs that they keep, Jalen Elliott cracked a roster spot, so he's the 5th safety. They keep 5 of those. Overall in defensive backs, Beanie Bishop, Deshaun Elliott, Jalen Elliott, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Dante Jackson, DeMonte Casey, Miles Killebrew, Joey Porter, Darius Rush, Corey Trice. The cornerbacks that are kept around. So there was a few surprises. I think Jalen Elliott was a guy who, busted his ass in training camp and preseason, earned a roster spot. Good for him. I think he'll have a place on special teams. And you look at the fact that they kept that large a number of safeties. I think that they kind of have PTSD from last year where they went through a ton of them. But they can also move around some guys. Like, they can put KZ in the slot. They could move around Jalen Elliott and Deshaun Elliott. So I think versatility was probably a big part of those decisions too. And now we're going to see what Beanie Bishop can do in the slot Week 1, unless they go Darius Rush. I mean, that's a possibility as well. But those are the guys that made the 53-man roster at defensive back. We look at the defensive line. Again, not too many shocks there. Monty Adams, Keanu Benton, Cam Hayward, DeMarvin Leal, Logan Lee, Isaiah Loudermilk, Dean Lowry, Larry Ogunjobi. So, again, not too many surprises here. I think most of these guys were expected to make the roster. I think the 53-man roster roughly looks like I expected it to look. So not too many surprises there. I'm trying to think, like, off the top of my head of, one of these defensive linemen that, might have escaped my head that didn't make it. But for the most part, I mean, these guys, those feel like the dudes that I was fully expecting to make the roster in some way, shape, or form. Loudermilk's been a rotational piece for a few years. They just signed Dean Lowry, who's proven to be, a reliable vet. Larry O, he's in his last year of his contract. Logan Lee, they just drafted. Monty Adams is a guy that they rotated in. Now, the Patriots did just release Armon Watts, and I know a lot of people were surprised that the Steelers didn't bring him back. So maybe that's a potential reunion that could take place on the defensive line. But I think for the most part, I mean, a lot of these are pretty, expected. Shout out Scotty Miller, man. I do want to, that's a guy where, amongst these names that were brought in, obviously all of them weren't going to make the roster. So Quez Watkins, Scotty, a lot of these names that people were like, okay, we'll see. Marquez Callaway was one for a little bit. Denzel Mims, obviously those guys were cut earlier on in this process. But Scotty Miller looked good in OTAs, looked good in minicamp, looked good in training camp, and he had a really nice preseason, and he earned a spot on the roster. So good for Scotty Miller. And now we kind of turn our attention to, okay, are they going to bring in another receiver? Because they certainly should. Now, one of the names being thrown around was Tim Patrick, because the Broncos were going to try to trade him, and if they weren't going to be able to trade him, they were going to release him. They ended up releasing him, and then the Lions immediately claimed him. So now Tim Patrick is going to Detroit. So you can take Tim Patrick off your receiver wish list if you're a Steelers fan. And now some other names that are being thrown around, names that we've thrown around for a while. John Metchie is starting to be one of those names because he had a really nice preseason, and he's buried on a Texans depth chart that has a lot of really good receivers. So Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, they're all in front of him. And the Texans also have other guys at that position that are pretty good. Like Xavier Hutchinson, they took him in the 7th round last year, I believe. Maybe the year before. So that's a guy who is a solid depth piece that they can have as their 4 or 5. Robert Woods is still there. Quintus Cephas is also on that roster. So not all of those guys are going to hang around. They already released Noah Brown after re-signing him, which made no sense. Like, you might as well just let him go if you were going to release him anyway. So Noah Brown's now available, and that's a name that I know a lot of Steelers people in my sphere of the world were like, yeah, go get Noah Brown. And I tweeted it. I was like, look, respectfully speaking, I don't know what the hell's up with this boner for Noah Brown that like my Steelers media friends all seem to have. And my buddy Nick Farbaugh was like, well, I mean, he's better than what they have right now, and he would probably be their number 2 right away, which is a fair point. But again, like at that point, it's just making a number 3 a number 2 rather than what they're doing now is making, a number 4 a number 2. It still doesn't move the needle for me. Makes them a little bit better, sure. But, I would rather a bigger move than that. So, I mean, if they do end up getting Noah Brown, I'm not going to be angry about it. And if they do end up getting John Metchie, I'm not going to be angry about it. Obviously, we all know what we want to happen, and it's been something that we've been talking about now for 3.5 weeks. Really, it's been 4.5 months, but, it's been ramping up for 3 weeks, and that is the potential of a trade for Brandon Aiyuk, which we're still waiting for. Still waiting for. This thing has dragged on so long for no reason. Like, either do it or don't. I don't know what the 49ers are waiting for. Clearly, nothing is getting done there. Doesn't seem like Aiyuk wants to be there. He's made that pretty clear from how this has all gone down. And CeeDee Lamb getting signed, I'm sure that didn't exactly help things, because now Aiyuk's going to sit back and be like, all right, you guys wanted to wait and play this game, so guess what? That price is going to probably go up again. And by the way, AFC North news just now from Adam Schefter. Ja'Marr Chase is expected to play in the team's season opener, despite not having a long-term contract. So don't expect a holdout for Ja'Marr Chase to continue. He'll be there week 1. Now, whether or not Brandon Aiyuk feels the same and whether or not something gets done there, that is yet to be determined. Trent Williams, their left tackle, he's prepared to hold out into the season. And the 49ers offensive line outside of Trent Williams isn't good. So right now, I think that's probably a little bit bigger of their priorities, making sure Trent Williams is there. Even though he's a little bit older, I mean, he's still one of the best left tackles in football. And if you don't have Trent Williams or Brandon Aiyuk, guess what, San Francisco? You ain't going to go very far. If you can't keep Brock upright, and you don't have anybody who can separate, I don't care about Kyle's schemes at that point. Nothing's going to be able to get done. So we'll see how that goes. Because obviously, Steelers fans, Aiyuk is still the golden goose that everybody's kind of holding out for. And this never-ending saga that is continuing. Yeah, it's annoying, for sure. So now we just kind of have to sit and wait and see what happens in terms of these wide receiver targets. But as of right now, I mean, if I had to go, receiver and tight ends in terms of, who the options are going to be, Pickens is going to be the 1. I think Pat Freiermuth is going to be the 2. Number 3, probably Calvin Austin right now. And then Van Jefferson, then Roman Wilson, because credit to Van Jefferson, he's had a really good camp in preseason. Roman Wilson's been hurt with the ankle, so we haven't been able to see him in the preseason, and now we're going to have to We'll see if we see him in week 1 against Atlanta. We got 12 days until then. And then in the run game, we'll see how much they incorporate Cordero Patterson into the offense. Obviously, he had the long touchdown run against Detroit in the preseason finale. It's still going to be Najee Harris and Jalen Warren getting the majority of those touches. And we're going to wait to see who the starting quarterback is going to be, although it's pretty evident that it's going to be Russell Wilson. So I'm intrigued, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of these questions are basically answered. Where, okay, Russ is going to be the starter. If he plays well, as long as he keeps playing well, he'll keep the job. But if he doesn't, Justin Fields is right there. Maybe we'll see Darnell Washington be more of a focal point in the passing game. Hopefully we see that. Obviously, they drafted him for a reason. And I hope it wasn't just to, be a blocker. He's a big athletic guy. Utilize him. What's going on, Mark? Missed the beginning. Was there any cut that surprised you? Not necessarily. I think Kyron Johnson surprised some people just because they had a really good preseason and training camp, but DeMarvin Leal also did, and they got a little bit more invested in DeMarvin Leal. So that one surprised me a little bit, but he's someone who, if he clears waivers, I think they'll bring him back and put him on the practice squad. I think some people, myself included, were holding out for John Rice Plumlee to find a spot on the roster. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I think he's another guy that if he clears waivers, he'll be brought back as a practice squad guy just because he's incredibly versatile. He kind of showed that. He had, kick returner, receiver, quarterback. He'll do whatever is expected of him and asked of him to try to make, impact the team. So, those were two that surprised me a little bit. Thomas Graham a little bit because he had some nice plays in the preseason, but Beanie Bishop, I think, deserves the job. But yeah, overall, I think most of the cuts were pretty expected. I didn't expect them to keep a boatload of running backs. 3 is kind of the number that makes sense for me. So no cuts that necessarily surprised me outside of Johnson and John Rice Plumlee. So that's about it. Jalen Elliott was the biggest surprise. Yeah, I think Jalen Elliott getting a roster spot was surprising. But again, last year they went through a ton of safeties. And when you have guys like Elliott, Casey, who can, they can try to utilize in a few different ways and maybe move around into the slot should they have to. That's not too surprising that they would go that route. But yeah, Jalen Elliott earned a spot. So good for him. Good for him. I think the Steelers will get another receiver soon. I assume that's the plan. I don't think that, because remember, the day before the draft, they redid Alex Highsmith's contract to free up $14 million. So clearly they made space for that for a reason. It's still there. They just haven't done anything with it yet. I think that they thought they were going to do something with it during the draft. I think that they thought they had a deal for one of those 49ers receivers. That's what Michael Lombardi reported on the GM Shuffle podcast. I think that they expected, okay, one of these guys is going to be ours tomorrow. Let's make the space now. And then the 49ers pulled out last minute. And they called about Courtland Sutton. I had that confirmed to me that they called about Sutton both before and during the draft, but the Broncos said no both times. So they fully expected to get somebody around draft time, and then it never happened. And they've just kind of been holding on to that money. And obviously the stuff with Aiyuk, they're trying to figure out right now too. They just kind of been in a 4-month-long staring contest with the 49ers, and none of them are blinking. So I would expect them to, yes. It's just a matter of, okay, who's it going to be? Which has been the question that we've had now for over 4 months. For the longest time, okay, it could be Aiyuk, it could be Debo, it could be Sutton, it could be DK. Right now, don't think it's going to be DK. It's all but confirmed it's not going to be Sutton. Probably not going to be Debo. So it's going to be Aiyuk. or it's going to be Noah Brown or John Metchie. For Noah Brown, they don't have to give up anything to get him, so that might be the first route they try to go if they can't get Aiyuk, because then they don't have to trade anything. But at the same time, John Metchie's only 24, has been buried on a depth chart of good receivers, and had to take some time away to treat a cancer diagnosis before coming back. So I think it'll be one of those three. And in talking to people, they're like, hopefully it gets done within 24 hours or 48 hours. I've been saying that for damn near 3-4 months. Like, I'm done thinking that I know when it's going to happen. I feel like I've tried to get on top of things when it's like, okay, I think it'll happen then. But this whole thing's just been a big, unpredictable CF, man. So nobody can really predict what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. But I do think it'll be somebody. I mean, again, they didn't free up that money for nothing. They expected to get somebody, and then everything fell through. And they've just kind of been holding on to that. So it'll either be finally they trade for Aiyuk, or they get a consolation prize of John Metchie and Noah Brown. One of those three will be a Steeler. I'm fairly confident in that. Surprised a little about Logan Lee. I mean, I'm not. I think that they drafted him. It was going to take like an awful performance throughout camp and preseason to get him off the roster. I think they're going to try to develop him and turn him into, a rotational guy. Steelers usually 1 or 2 players between now and game 1. Which player or players could still be on the hot seat in your opinion? Guys on the hot seat. It depends on what position they go out and get. Obviously, I mean that's part of it. Just looking at the roster, if I had to guess, maybe Dan Moore. If they end up just trying to move him for something, or just sign a guy and let him go altogether. But at the same time, they can't do it until Fatanu's healthy, so he'll probably be safe for at least a little bit, especially with all the stuff with Broderick Jones. So I don't know. I don't think it would be anybody on offense. I think maybe Isaiah Loudermilk. Yeah, I mean, looking at the defensive backfield, Loudermilk and maybe Jalen Elliott, if they decide to make some sort of roster move and they have to cut one guy to bring in one guy. I mean, those would be 2 names I would be looking at. Maybe Ryan McCollum, because Mason McCormick's there, and they kept a decent amount of offensive linemen this year. So we'll see. Scotty Miller is out if we sign a receiver. That's certainly possible, but at the same time, I would say Scotty Miller's played really well throughout this entire process and throughout the preseason. So I would rather them just cut bait with one of the backup offensive linemen, send him down to the practice squad, and keep 6 receivers, rather than just get rid of Scotty Miller. That would be what I would want them to do. I would rather them, I'd be much more confident. I mean, not that I want anybody to lose their job, but like, if you're going to cut anybody, cut, Ryan McCollum. And again, worst case scenario, you lose him, sure, but more likely scenario, he probably clears waivers and you just put him back on the practice squad and store him there. I would rather them keep as many skill guys as they can just in case of injury. And again, Scotty played well, so they can afford to keep one more receiver because they only have 5 right now because they kept the extra tight end. So I see the logic. Like, I get it, because, if they bring in a receiver, the logic says, okay, they'll probably get rid of a receiver. So I get that. But I would like to see them keep Scotty Miller, personally. I think that he's earned that. But yeah, we're getting day by day closer and closer where The season kicks off in 12 days for the Steelers, a week from Thursday for the NFL, where the Chiefs and Ravens will play week 1. By the way, I'm looking forward to that, man. I've never been more confident that one team is just going to handedly beat the other than Chiefs Ravens. I think the Chiefs are going to win by 10. I'm pretty confident in that. Pretty confident in it. I have a piece coming out on SB Nation about the Ravens soon. So once that's out, I'll direct you guys where you can read it because, yeah, I think that I'm like the only person in the media who's like, yeah, the Ravens are kind of overrated, huh? I feel like I'm on an island. If you watch the Pump Fake, my national podcast, and me and Matt Verderam talk about this a lot whenever he's on. I think he's one of the only guys that really agrees with me. Is that the Ravens are just like, yeah, like they'll beat bad teams, and like the defense is really good. It was last year, but they're gonna fall off. I think that last year was kind of the Ravens' best chance at a Super Bowl, and I think for now their window's kind of closed. Not to say it can't open again, but I don't know, man. They don't scare me. Not just as a Steelers fan, I think just in general. Like, I'm not worried about the Ravens in the playoffs. I worry about the Chiefs. I worry about the Bengals. I worry about the Bills in the AFC. I worry about the Texans now in the AFC because CJ Stroud's that dude. Those are the teams I worry about. If Jacksonville gets back in and Trevor looks like he did before he got hurt, then I'll worry a little bit about Jacksonville. But I don't think Jacksonville's unbeatable. But the three teams I like am truly like, okay, yeah. Like if the Steelers face them, like, yeah, they're not going to win. Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati. If the Steelers were in a situation where they were like the 6th seed and Baltimore was the 3 and they had to go to Baltimore in the wild card round, I would be uber confident in that. Like, okay, yeah, the Steelers are going to win that game. They can absolutely beat Baltimore in the playoffs. That's a good shout, Rob. I'm not worried about the Dolphins either. The Dolphins are the biggest frauds in the NFL. Go look at, the past 2 years, go look at their record against teams with winning records. It's abysmal. They get the hell beat out of them anytime they play a good team. They lost both times to Kansas City. They got humiliated by Baltimore. They got beat up by Philadelphia. They lost both times to the Bills. The only team that they did beat that was a playoff team last year was Dallas. And then, Dallas shows up in the playoffs the way that they always do, and that's by being a giant disappointment anyway. No, I think the Dolphins are massive frauds. The Dolphins don't scare me in the slightest. Hell, when the Steelers played them in 2022, they damn near beat them. Was it 13-10 or something? 16-10 was a low-scoring game. And Pickett was leading a drive, and he almost led him to a game-winning drive. He threw a pick in the end zone. I think he had 3 interceptions that game. And the game ended because he threw a pick in the end zone. So, yeah, Dolphins don't scare me. Not in the slightest. Not afraid of the Dolphins. Dallas versus the Browns. That'll be a good one. And by the way, speaking of that game, did a sit-down with Kalen Carson, the Cowboys rookie cornerback, who is now going to be kind of slotted in as that starter for the duration of Deron Bland's injury. So go and watch that. That's on the channel. Me and Kalen Carson. Just a quick little 10-minute segment talking to him. I talked to him before the draft as well and did a feature story on him. So shot him a text like, hey, what are you doing? You want to do a quick little segment? And he was really gracious with his time. So, yeah, go and watch the sit-down I did with Kalen Carson on the channel. I think the Texans have passed the Bills. Outside of Allen, the Texans are better. I would listen to that argument. I think overall as a roster, they're better. But, I mean, you guys, if you follow me on Twitter or, if you just watch the Pump Fake or just know me in general, you know how I feel about Josh Allen. So, as long as the Bills have Josh Allen, I'm never going to count them out. But their defense has let them down consistently in the playoffs. And until that gets better, it's going to be hard for them to get over that hump. Houston, I think their defense is going to be really good. It's not going to get as much attention as the offense. but their defense is built to be a really good unit this year too. I think that Derek Stingley is a guy that can have a really nice breakout year. So, yeah, I'm all on board Houston. I think that they're going to be great. So, yeah, just wanted to hop on and talk about the 53-man roster. And as we gear toward the regular season, now that preseason's over, again, we'll start doing a couple of these a week. So a couple black and gold breakdowns, a couple pump fakes, and then because apparently I don't already have a full enough plate, me and my friend Eli Berkovitz of CBS Sports are going to be starting a new podcast this season. It is called Hang Time. So join us every Monday and Friday. So we'll kind of break down things that happen on Sunday, and then Fridays we'll recap Thursday night and preview the Sunday ahead. So that's Hang Time with me and Eli Berkovitz. That will get its own YouTube channel. It already has its own YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/@HangTimeNFLPodcast, you can subscribe. And then the first episode will be, I believe, next Monday is when we're going into it. And when that goes live, if you're not already subscribed, I'll post stuff on here as well. So just so you guys can subscribe to it and follow me and Eli doing it. So Eli's great. Go and follow him on Twitter as well. Book of Eli _NFL. Again, CBS Sports. Packers fan. I think the Packers are going to be awesome this year. They're my Super Bowl pick out of the NFC. So that'll be a lot of fun. So many podcast stuff I'm doing throughout the NFL season. So if you want the full schedule, there will be 2 pump fakes per week. There will be 2 black and gold breakdowns per week. And then there will be 2 episodes of Hang Time per week. So I'm gearing up for it because I know eventually I'm going to hit a wall of writing and podcasting. And it will come. It will come. I think that's why, like over the preseason stuff, I just kind of only did like one of these per week, like talking after the preseason games and everything. I just kind of hit a wall coming back into the games, and I just needed a little breather. So I'm going to be gearing up on a lot of coffee, a lot of pumpkin spice coffee. And maybe I'll get back into energy drinks. We'll see. But it's going to be a busy year for me. But I hope you guys follow along. So if you want to make it worth my while, subscribe to the channel, like all the videos, tell your people, tell your friends, tell your family, hey, subscribe to this, watch these, like these, make it worth it. I know that, like I said, I became a little bit stagnant with doing this over the past few weeks. The writing portion of my job definitely just kind of tuckered me out, and I was like, man. Oh, the college football game coming out also did a lot to that, where I was like, I would rather just play college football for a little bit today. I don't feel like doing a show. So, but now that the season's going to be back, yes, we'll do 2 of these a week and then 2 episodes of the other 2 podcasts as well. So 6 total shows that you can get per week from me. And the best way to support me is subscribe and to keep liking the videos and to keep commenting and doing all the YouTube stuff. So I appreciate you guys for watching, as you always do. And yeah, we'll be back later on the channel. If you want to watch the NFC over-unders show on the Pump Fake, me and Mike Tanier did that yesterday. It was so fun. Anytime that him and I do a show, it's chaotic. And yesterday was chaotic. So much chaotic, actually, that the monetization part of it got limited because of how much F-bombs we threw around. So go at least watch it, please, because now it's going to need more views to make me more money off of it, because we swore too much. So go and watch that. It's a very good show with me and Mike Tanier going through every NFC team's over-under prediction. And kind of just saying if we would take the over or the under on the betting side of it. So go and watch that. And then later on in the week, we'll do AFC over-unders. Don't know who it's going to be with yet, but it'll be someone good. It's always someone good. See a few more questions coming in. Yes, we do. Bigger man crush, Josh Allen or Joe Burrow? Josh Allen, definitely. I like Joe Burrow, but Josh Allen is, definitely the bigger man crush for sure. What did you think about the Georgia Tech win over Florida State? I was watching the preseason games, so I didn't see all of it. I watched like the first hour of it. I'm not going to pretend to be a college football expert. I am not, but I will say this: DJ Uiagalelei has been in college for like 9 years. Like, get a job, bro. What do you do? This isn't going to work, man. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the end of that. I think it is very funny that Florida State was favored by like 10.5, flew all the way to Ireland just to lose. So that's funny. I didn't have any horse in the race, so I can just look at it objectively and think that's hilarious. But yeah, very odd that the DJU, he's been in college forever. So, yeah, he's not very good. Hope everything works out for him, but I mean, what is this, like year 6 for him in college? Like, I just don't think it's going to work, man. But yeah, like I said, later on in the week on the Pump Fake AFC over-unders, go and watch the NFC over-under show with Mike Tanier. We'll do we're going to start doing 2 black and gold breakdowns per week as we get into week 1. So we will do, I think, Tuesday, Friday, or Monday, Friday, similar schedule to the other shows. There will be 2 a week. I don't know if it's going to be like a set in stone day type of thing, but there will be 2 a week of these. And like I said, the best way to support me is subscribe, like, do all the YouTube stuff. Appreciate you guys watching. Have a great night, and I will see you guys soon.